Video 5 is on deck next. I'm Leela Barker for Lucky Break Consulting. Thank you so much for joining me here in Brick House Branding. I have some knowledge I want to lay down for you about brand names specifically, and I'm also going to do a little work on taglines in this video as well. Together, you and I are about to discover the mechanics of a great, solid brand name. I'm going to tell you how to make sure that your brand name is protectable because that is uber important. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to wrap things up with a little bit of information on how you might develop a tagline. We're continuing to work through your workbook for Module 2, your progress tracker for number 2. I have some new tools and resources that I'm going to introduce in this video so that Module 2 resource list is not a worksheet. It's just a reference for you, and we're going to bring forward some things from that resource list in this video. I do have a worksheet though. It's called Brand Name Audit. It's just checkboxes. It's painless. You can do it in 5 minutes or less, but you're definitely going to want to work through that exercise. All right, let's start by chatting about brand names. I've already shared with you my deep and abiding love for Bernadette Jiwa, brilliant business author. She has a really fun quote from her book, The Fortune Cookie Principle. She says, naming your business is every bit as hard as naming your baby, except that you've got the added problem of securing the domain name. Who is with Miss Jiwa? This was one of the biggest struggles for me in naming both of my companies. Just coming up with a viable name that communicated what I want, that people could get behind, and to make sure that I could own those names, truly make them mine. That was a Herculean struggle in the early days of my business. And what I have noticed is that a lot of people just sort of pick names because you don't know any better. You pick a name, you get into commerce, and then you start to understand more about how business works, and you realize suddenly that maybe that name doesn't fit me so well. Maybe that has connotations I don't like. Maybe that's too generic. Maybe I can't actually own that name. If you find yourself in that position during the course of this video, it's okay. You're going to be in good company. There are several, what I lovingly refer to, and cover sensitive ears, please, if there are kids around you, turn me down for a second. There are several oh shit moments every single semester as people realize that their brand names are not viable. Again, I don't mean to be the Grinch, but the sooner you realize that you have an unviable name, right? A name that's just not going to work, the sooner you know that in your business, the better, because you can change it and put this whole ugly episode behind you. But it is my responsibility to let you know the importance of brand names and that you need to have one that you can truly, truly own. Brand name woes are far more common than you think. I had terrible brand name woes. If anybody wants to hear about them, pop a question into the queue for the office hour call coming up next week. I will be glad to share them with you. But I had terrible naming woes that were gut-wrenching, that caused me to lose momentum, that caused me many, many tears, that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is not a joke. Hundreds of thousands. I could have bought a Bentley with what I paid to get out of my naming mess. And I thought that I had just really screwed up. I thought that that was sort of a unique experience to me, and I felt terribly, terribly shameful about it until I started a consulting company. And that's when I realized naming woes happen all the friggin' time. I get calls almost weekly, definitely monthly, from people who go, oh my God, I'm up the creek. Help me find my paddle. And it all revolves around brand names. So this is something that's not often talked about. Again, I think there's just a lot of fear or shame attached to it. But I want to bring it to the light, triage it, and help us all deal with it so that you can move on and be successful. So let's begin by talking about what a great brand name actually is. Brand names need to be brief. My question is it short enough to be readily remembered? People generally remember a brand name by 1 or 2 names at most. So anything more than 2 words is likely to be shortened. For instance, my company is called Lucky Break Consulting. When people refer to it very often on Facebook or when I see someone at an event, they call it Lucky Break. 2 words and done. Not many people give the consulting love. That's all right, but you just need to remember long brand names get shortened. It needs to be clearly pronounced. Is your brand name easy to pronounce? People hesitate to say things that might make them appear less intelligent. Again, that's just a facet of human nature. So if the pronunciation is unclear, then your customers are not likely to tell people about your brand. They might type it to someone in an email or comment on somebody's Facebook post that they need your product because they know how to spell it. But when they're talking to women over coffee or they're in a mom play group, they're not going to say your business name, because if people aren't confident that they're going to sound smart when they speak, they don't speak. And you need people speaking about you. Your brand name should be obviously spelled. If it can't be spelled easily, then it's going to be really hard to find your website. Don't make Googling your brand an uphill battle. Google is literally the key to the universe in this day and age. So don't fight with them and pick a battle. Make yourself delightfully easy to find. A great brand name is also appropriate. Does it reasonably fit the purpose of your brand? It could be quirky, it could be unexpected, but it needs to be appropriate. It also needs to be distinctive. Does the name stand out from the competition? And even more than that, does it stand out from ordinary text and speech so as not to sound or appear generic when people read it or say it? So if your brand name is in the middle of a sentence and I'm reading that sentence, I need to understand that I've hit upon a brand name. And some names that we've selected are just too vanilla or generic to stand out. This one is massive. Is your brand name protectable? And I mean protectable at the federal level. Can you secure a federal trademark for your brand? Also, can you secure an obvious domain name? And here's what I really mean by an obvious domain name. Earlier in this module, I introduced you to Freshly Picked, those handmade kids and baby shoes. So if you were Freshly Picked, that's your brand name. Ideally, you would want freshlypicked.com. If that was unavailable, you could probably do an obvious alternate, something like shopfreshlypicked.com. That would be suitable. You could probably work around that. Ideally, you'd have both. Ideally, you are laying down domain registrations like your life depends on it. They only cost a few dollars per year, and they form a nice protective bubble around your company. So if I was the owner of Freshly Picked, I would get freshlypicked.com, and that's where I park my site. I would also get shopfreshlypicked.com, freshlypickedshoes.com, maybe freshlypickedhandmade.com. And even if I didn't use them, I'm just locking other people out of them. Again, building that protective bubble around my company. So let's go back to that scenario of having to choose Shop Freshly Picked over freshlypicked.com. If your brand name, if the .com for your brand name is already taken, then I think it's okay to put shop in front of it or some other very obvious variant. However, there's an asterisk to that. If you are a shoemaker, and freshlypicked.com is already a shoemaker, then you can't be a shoemaker at shopfreshlypicked.com, right? Because then you're competitive. So you want to make sure if you choose an alternate that you're not choosing an alternate because somebody really already has your brand name. And just FYI, it's nice to own .orgs and .nets, but commerce happens on .coms, right? Like that's what the .com stands for. You really need to make sure that your website is on a .com. If you want to reserve the other extensions, the .orgs, the .nets, that's amazing, but you can't use those as a substitute for the .com. All right, let's move on. I also want to ensure that your brand name is likable. Will your target audience enjoy using it? Is it a name that they're going to enjoy sharing with others that are important to them? Does it conjure up some positive connotations in the brain when people say it? How easily does it roll off the tongue? How does the name sound when I say it? Not just, how does it look when it's written, but how does it sound when I say it? Also important, flexibility. Does it lend itself to visual interpretation? Eventually, we're going to build a logo, and a lot of that logo may depend on the visual interpretation. It may hinge on the visual interpretation of that brand name. So we want to think about when I say that name, is there a visual interpretation that begins to formulate in people's brains? Also, is the brand name flexible enough that you can create some catchy copy around it? Can it be used to create brand extensions? If you decide to go in some additional or different directions with your brand, would this name still fit that cause? Again, another quote from Bernadette Jiwa. I can't help myself with her stuff. She's so brilliant. She said, a great name can take a business places that a good name can't. It makes room for a new story in people's hearts and minds, and it can help to position a product beyond its utility. This brand name is the first impression. It matters. Spend some good time thinking about it and working through the prompts and the questions that I just asked you about likability and pronounceability and flexibility and all those other important abilities. Now, I want to teach you one naming trick that is often very effective. It's called the associate descriptive name. These names actually link themselves to something that's readily identifiable by the reader while relating back to the brand to identify a key brand benefit. I'll give you an example in just a moment. Associative descriptive names are so great because they typically require fewer resources to gain market traction. And also, they're typically fairly protectable via federal trademark. So that makes them a smart option for new creative brands who are on a limited budget. If you're on a limited budget and you're still percolating on a name, consider this strategy. Let's peep a few examples to help gel this concept. Amazon. When I say that word today, you probably think of the world's largest retailer online, right? Jeff Bezos and all that Amazon Prime, quick shipping, all that goodness. However, 10 or 15 years ago, before Amazon really came on the scene and conquered the internet, as it already has, when people heard the word Amazon, they typically thought of the world's longest river. That has been how we have used that word in our vernacular for centuries. So Amazon was the world's longest river. Amazon, the internet company, came along and they needed a name that immediately had some meaning or some resonance with people. They chose the name Amazon because Amazon has also now been used to describe things which are massive in size or scope. And by doing that, they attach themselves to that ready-made meaning that's already in your mind. Amazon's product selection is massive in scope. Another fun example, you might remember this one from your childhood. Remember Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, that cartoon? That Roadrunner was so speedy that his legs literally went in a blurry circle, and he was always managing to outrun Wile E. Coyote, right? Well, Roadrunner is a famous cartoon character renowned for his speed, and Roadrunner internet services are the fastest available. Again, it's a way to sort of piggyback on a current meaning or association that the public probably already knows. I need you to think about changing your brand name if you know that it's too generic or somebody else already has it. I want to be very clear. I am not a trademark attorney. I cannot help you make those decisions. In fact, I'm legally barred from giving you legal advice because I don't even play an attorney on TV. However, in an upcoming week, we are about to have an interview. One of my expert interview guests is a trademark attorney, and she's going to tell you more about how this works. So don't sweat it too much in this moment, but definitely watch that interview. As I said before, several people each semester find themselves in the situation of needing to change their brand name. Here's the process we're going to work through when we need to do that, okay? First, we're going to take deep breaths because this is survivable. Normally, name changes really rock people in their core. It's upsetting, but we can do this. We can do this together, gang. Here's how we're going to do it. One, we're going to check with the USPTO and Domain Name Tools to check availability. The USPTO is the Patent and Trademark Office. That's the federal trademark database. Domain Tools is going to make sure that the domain name, the .com, is available. These links are available on the resource list attached to Module 2. I'll link you directly to them. Also, once you decide that the domain's available and the trademark's available by working through step 1, you are going to lock this new name down ASAP with formal registrations. So you're going to go back and you're going to secure the domain name. You're going to buy it. You're going to file an application with the trademark office to make sure that you are first in line for that name. Then I want you to set up shop at your new domain name and ensure that your old domain name seamlessly forwards to this new site. That's a very quick adjustment in the tech panel of your website with your host. They can make it to where people punch in your old brand name and automatically, without even realizing it, land on the new website. Easy, free, get it done. Then I want you to change your social media handles. You're going to make sure that you lock down your brand name on every social media platform, even if you can't imagine using that platform. Every time a new one pops up, go grab your name. And again, you might want to consider grabbing variants of your name as well. So freshly picked and freshly picked shoes too, right? And the fifth and final step of any name change process is to bring your customers into awareness. We're going to roll out this announcement for both wholesale customers and retail consumers as well. And I think the key here is getting the word out on a massive scale. So we're going to put it out through multiple channels, meaning our blog, our social media, our email marketing newsletters, and we're going to put it out multiple times through each of those channels. You've worked probably really hard to get the brand awareness up for your current name. We want to be able to bring as much of that recognition as possible over to the new name. So we want to save as much of that brand capital as we can and then convert it over to the new name, which means people have to understand that you were brand X last week and brand Y next week. I think sometimes we as brand owners get tired of our own stuff, right? Like we feel like we've said this so many times through so many channels, but people have limited bandwidth. They're not always paying attention. And so we want to make sure that those people have had adequate opportunities to see and understand the message that we're putting forward. All right, enough about brand name changes. Let's chat about taglines. And I want to be very clear. I used to not teach taglines in Brickhouse Branding because to me, they're like a nice little bonus, but not really important. And what I found is that people want to hear about taglines. They feel like this is a fundamental piece of their branding. So I started to bring this tagline curriculum in, but then I noticed something else. People get really hung up on the tagline. A lot of people have a hard time grasping the concept, or they feel like they can't move forward until they have a tagline. Be ye not one of those people, please, right? This is truly a bonus brand asset. There are many successful brands that do not have taglines. You are not doomed to failure if you don't have a tagline. So if one comes to you naturally, that's awesome. But there are so many really important things that we need to focus on here in Brickhouse Branding. Taglines don't make my top 10 list. Not even close. So let's start with a quick definition of what a tagline is. Deborah, in her book Outsmarting Goliath, defined a tagline this way. It's a slogan, a clarifier, a mantra, a company statement, or a guiding principle that describes, synopsizes, or helps create an interest. So taglines are essentially short, punchy, memorable phrases that become a shorthand for what your brand delivers. Taglines are designed to provide consumers with an indication of your brand and its market position in just a few memorable words. Your tagline is ultimately designed to make people sort of lean forward and go, that's interesting. Tell me more. A tagline may accompany your logo. In other words, they may be used in conjunction with one another. Sometimes a tagline even becomes part of the logo. And we'll talk about logos in Module 5 of BHB. I recommend that you always have a version of your logo that doesn't include your tagline, even if you have a really killer tagline. But sometimes you'll see those two things used in conjunction with one another. Now, when you're sculpting a tagline, when you're designing your own, ideally we don't want to repeat any of the same words or concepts as the brand name. So if there's a keyword in the brand name, we don't also use that keyword in the tagline, because taglines are designed to enrich and enhance the brand name, but not to reiterate it. The biggest thing with taglines is to keep it simple. Have you ever heard the KISS philosophy? Keep it simple, stupid. That's what we're doing with taglines. Try to own one thing, just one thing. I'm going to play a little game with you in a minute and see if you can recognize some memorable taglines. So great taglines are short. We're trying to knock this thing out in less than 10 syllables, and you should absolutely cut yourself off at 13 syllables. We don't want wordy mumbo jumbos, right? We want something short, punchy, concise, and memorable. Again, that memorable piece is very important. We want to make this something that's easy for your customer to recall. Great taglines are also original and believable. By original, I mean yours alone, not already trademarked not borrowed from a bigger brand, yours alone. And then something that you can actually deliver on. Again, we're not making lofty promises. We're not presenting a fairy tale version of our brand. This should be believable and something you can deliver on. Also, a tagline should convey your point of difference. What sets your brand apart in the marketplace? Remember in Module 1, we talked about core conversations. What makes us different? It is very common for people when they're working on this core conversation, it's such a new concept, they automatically start writing taglines, right? You probably heard some of that on our last office hour call. But people start to put the pretty on this and make that core conversation very customer facing, and it sounds a whole hell of a lot like a tagline. That's awesome for a tagline. The core conversation punches and goes directly to the gut. The tagline is more flowery, right? It's designed with our customer in mind, but it still is reiterating what sets our brand apart within the marketplace. And finally, a great tagline reflects the brand personality. It's in step with the essence of the brand. So let's play a little game I like to call, Whose Tagline Is It Anyway? Fresh hot pizza in 30 minutes or it's free. Any idea what brand that belongs to? Fresh hot pizza in 30 minutes or it's free. That's the tagline for Domino's. I love it because it's their promise. Remember, a tagline is a promise that you can deliver on. They're asserting a promise, and that promise is part of what makes them different in the marketplace. I bet you know this one, even if you didn't get the first one. Does a body good? What does a body good? This is one of the most successful marketing campaigns in all of history. Milk. Milk does a body good. Whose tagline is Think Different. Think different. That's Apple. Remember, those Apple people are design savvy innovators. You're in good hands with who? You're in good hands with Allstate. What is the happiest place on earth? This is such a great tagline. One of my favorites. Disneyland is the happiest place on earth. What takes a licking and keeps on ticking? This one is also pretty iconic. That is Timex, the watch company. Where can you expect more but pay less? That's Target. It's like my mecca here in Georgia. All right, so expect more and pay less. Again, it's that brand promise that they're hoping to deliver on. When you come to Target, you can expect more great designs, more selection, more tremendous service, but you're going to pay less than you would at a department store. It's a great brand promise. And ideas worth spreading. If you've ever seen a TED Talk, TED Talks are all about ideas worth spreading. Now remember when I said that taglines should be short and memorable. I wanted you to do this ideally in 10 syllables or less, and we've got to really cut the cord at 13 syllables maximum. I want you to do a quick syllable count of all of these taglines. 11 is our lengthiest tagline. That's the Domino's tagline up top. And our shortest ones are some of the most memorable. Think different, you're in good hands. Short, punchy. 4 syllables. That's it. You don't need a whole lot. Shorter is typically better because it's more memorable. So if you decide that you want to craft a tagline for yourself, I'm all for it. Again, I support it. I just don't want you to get hung up in it. When you're working on your tagline construction, I want you to tell the reader what you offer that's different than your competitors. This next piece is important. I want you to choose clear over clever. So people should understand what you're trying to say. If you can do that in an original, witty way that's very clever, amazing. But what you don't want to do is put forward a tagline that's really clever, but not clear, because then people scratch their heads and go, well, I don't know what the hell she was trying to say, but all right. Like that didn't help, right? That did not provide brand clarity. I want you to focus on benefits rather than features to tell people what's in it for them when it comes to your products. If you're not sure the difference between a feature versus a benefit, hop back one video. It's like move back one space because we talked about that emotional resonance piece in video number 4. I also want you to make certain that the tagline reflects the brand personality that we've otherwise been cultivating here in module number 2, and above all else, keep it simple. So here's a process for building your tagline. I think the best taglines just start with a really hearty brainstorm. I want you to take out a piece of paper, a nice blank slate, if you will, park yourself somewhere quiet, and just do some free-form association. How do you want people to feel about your brand? Ask yourself that question, write down the answers. What makes your brand different? Let's write all of that down. Then your next step should be to jot down familiar words and phrases that align with your mission and your core conversation. What we're doing is creating all of these buzzwords, these keywords that we can later sculpt into a tagline. Once you have that brainstorm dump from steps 1 and step 2, I recommend going back and let's do some editing now. Cut words which are overly specific or so vague that they really don't have any meaning. And then what you've got at the end of that process is a curated list of words that really have a strong association with your brand. And you can play with the arrangement of the words in a way that's catchy and memorable. Sometimes when I'm trying to free words up and play with the arrangement, I like to put them one at a time on an index card. It's almost like making flashcards with all of these words, and then you can get a big blank space on the floor and move them around independently. I keep my smartphone nearby, and when I find a nice arrangement of words, then I take a picture. This is a great exercise to do for product names, for brand names, for taglines. Anytime you're playing with words, try the index card trick. It's pretty helpful to me. I hope it also proves helpful for you. I'd like to share a stellar example of a really effective tagline, and this one happens to be pretty close to my heart. Here's why. It's for the brand Print Therapy, and Print Therapy is run by a lovely lady named Melissa, who just so happens to be Lucky Break Consulting's operations manager. So she keeps all the balls in the air here, make sure that we launch all the things that we're saying we're going to launch, and helps me break down these big, massive projects into bite-sized pieces. But she has run her own stationery business for several years now called Print Therapy. When she first came into my classes, because fun fact, I make every staff member take every single class so that they have an intimacy and awareness. If you ever call and say, is this class right for me? Or I have this problem, what would be best? They've been through all of them. All of them. So anyway, Melissa was in a semester-long wholesale class that was very dense with apothecary brands, personal care brands, meaning people who made perfumes or soaps or bath bombs. And she really sometimes felt like a fish out of water because she was one of very few paper brands in that semester. But this is why I teach these classes that are not product category specific. It's because I love the cross-pollination that happens when paper brands learn from apothecary brands, and apothecary brands learn from apparel brands. There's a magic and a beauty that happens when those people come together and start to play off one another. So Melissa, for 2 or 3 months, heard the word apothecary almost every day. And it caused her to think a little bit differently about her own company, and she ended up rebranding. She kept the Print Therapy name, but she came up with a new logo and a fantastic tagline. She is Print Therapy, a feel-good paper apothecary. I love it. I love it for so many reasons. A feel-good paper apothecary immediately gives me a sense of what she does. I thought it was brilliant in her logo design to make the word paper stand out by using a different color for that particular word. It helps to create that differentiation and that distinction that she's not an apothecary company, she's a paper apothecary. Melissa's work centers around very emotive stationery. Stationery for the days that are hard. Stationery for when you need a boost, a card to give to a friend in a time of travail. They're almost like salves for the heart. And so she took that word apothecary, pulled it into her tagline, and created this really witty turn of phrase, Print Therapy, a feel-good paper apothecary. If you look up Melissa's work online, it's print-therapy.com. She uses a lot of watercolor. That's her signature for all of her card designs. And she also pulled watercolor into her logo and did this adorable message in a bottle, but all the messages are love notes. So well done. Now, whenever I give this tagline talk, inevitably Nike comes up, right? Because Nike has the best tagline on the planet, just do it. The problem is that just do it doesn't conform to any of the things that I told you need to think about when you were building your own tagline. I mean, what's the promise in just do it, right? What's distinctive or different about that other than the fact that Nike owns it? Well, I wanted to break it down. Does just do it work for Nike? Absolutely. Why does just do it work so well? Because you can instantly recall it and associate it with Nike. If I ask for Nike's tagline, you'd automatically roll off with just do it. But why do you associate just do it with the brand Nike? Do you know? It's because they've spent tens of millions of dollars to cement that association in your mind. Just do it on its own means nothing. Nothing as far as a brand promise about Nike. So here's my question for you. Do you have tens of millions of dollars to spend on advertising? If you do, then graduation drinks for the whole class are on you. But for most of us, the answer is probably not. If you do not wake up naked on piles of cash every single morning, then I want you to take a different strategy. I want you to develop a tagline that's concrete and reflects your brand's point of difference. Something much more concrete than just do it, and something that reflects what makes you different than all the other brands in the marketplace. So before I wrap this video, I want you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. Yes, I can see you. Yes, I'm waiting to see that right hand in the air. You ready? Get it up nice and high. Repeat after me. I will not lose even one moment of sleep over my tagline. You promise me? Again, nice bonus to have. But there is so much brand development work that we need to do that takes a lot of energy. And when I think about my top 10 list of brand assets I want you to develop here in Brickhouse Branding, taglines don't even hit the top 10. So if you have some creative juices flowing, if you're fired up to tackle this project, if you've got some good inspiration, amazing, go for it. If not, skip, because heaven knows there are other things waiting for you. Speaking of other things waiting for you, how about my next worksheet? It's called the Brand Name Audit, and you will love it because you can do it in 5 minutes or less. It's just check marks, and check boxes. It's going to help you put your brand name under the microscope. So I want you to print one copy and just walk through the prompts. They're the prompts that were actually encapsulated in this video about what makes for a good brand name. Now we're going to apply those questions to your current brand name or your proposed brand name. At the end of that, I want you to look at how many boxes you were able to tick off for your brand name. It may not be every single one, but gosh darn it, it better be more boxes checked than unchecked. And that is it protectable box is a really important one to check. If you get to the end of that exercise and realize, you know what, there are not enough check marks on this paper, then I want you to start thinking of a plan B for your brand name. And we can talk about that in your individual private strategy session that's coming up. But this should shed some light on sort of the status of your brand name pretty quickly and easily. One other packet of resources that I have for you is that Module 2 resource list. It provides some additional tools and recommendation to support this module's curriculum. Now there's an entire section there of fun tools that help you pull forward funky names or not very common words if you're really on a quest to come up with a unique brand name. But even more important than that, going back to this idea of your brand name being protectable, I want you to look at the intellectual property resources that are there on the Module 2 resource list. Several things have been gathered for you. The first thing is the official search engine at the trademark office. I'm going to link you directly to it, and I need you to do some searches for your brand name and just sort of see where it falls with regard to protectability at the federal level. If you're not well versed in using the trademark search engine, then you need to look at number 2, That's a tutorial from attorney Tiffany Stahl on how to use that search engine. Here's a little spoiler alert. If you go to that search engine and you put your exact brand name in it and it gives you 0 results, that does not mean you can have that brand name. There's things about different spellings or words that sound like yours or your exact words in a different product category that can all be obstacles to you owning it. So it's not as cut and dry as just putting in your name, getting 0 results, and declaring it done. I wish it were that easy, but it's not. So I really want you to pay attention to that tutorial. Even if you've used the search engine database before, if you haven't done a very thorough search, watch the tutorial that you see on your screen in number 2, and then pop back up to number 1 and do the actual search. I also have provided the contact information for several of my favorite trademark attorneys. I want to be very clear. I don't get kickbacks or affiliate dollars from anybody that you do business with that I recommend here in Brickhouse Branding. It's not that kind of party. I may get some good karma. I might get a thank you card in the mail if they get a new client, but I accept $0. If you already have a great attorney, use your attorney. But so many people come to me and say, I need a starting point. I don't know anybody. These are my somebodies that I can recommend to you. One other caveat about trademark law. It is complex and it is nuanced. So your neighbor's cousin's brother, who is a personal injury attorney, cannot help you, even though he's an attorney. He doesn't know enough about intellectual property. Trademarks fall under the umbrella of intellectual property, so you need an intellectual property or IP attorney to help you. Again, if you have one, amazing, right? But if you only have a business attorney or a tax attorney or a personal injury attorney or a divorce attorney, those people cannot help you. If you need a starting point for good people that I trust, that really understand trademark, check out that resource list. And with that, you just earned another check on your Module 2 progress tracker. 2 videos left in the hatch for this module. We're going to start turning our attention now towards something very different, and that's cultivating a strong brand voice and becoming a better writer. I have to just go take some deep breaths. It's a lot of talking. I know it's a lot of listening for you. It's a lot of talking for me. I'm going to do some yoga stretches, a little downward dog, a little tree at my desk. I'm going to refill my hot tea. I hope that you will do the same, and then we can reunite and rendezvous in video number 6. In the meantime, I'm Leila Barker for Lucky Break Consulting. I'll catch you in the next video.